They say one kiss can change your life. For Naomi Brooks, it took exactly 3 seconds to kiss a complete stranger and the rest of her life to understand what that kiss truly cost her. The man she kissed? Kang Min-suk, billionaire, businessman, and the most dangerous man in Seoul. What Naomi didn't know was that this one desperate act, this borrowed kiss, would pull her into a world of organized crime, family vendettas, and a love so intense it could either save her or destroy her completely. If you're ready for a story about desperate choices, dangerous love, and a kiss that changed everything, then hit that like button right now, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me, would you ever kiss a complete stranger to escape your ex? Let's find out together what happens when a borrowed kiss becomes something real. Now, let's dive into Naomi's story. 6 months before that fateful kiss, Naomi Brooks was standing in a white dress in front of 200 people, waiting for a groom who would never come. Darius, her fiancé of 3 years, had left her at the altar. No explanation, no warning, just gone. The humiliation was crushing. The pity in people's eyes was worse. Her mother cried in the front pew. Her father looked murderous. Her bridesmaids didn't know whether to hug her or pretend nothing was happening. The wedding coordinator kept asking if they should wait 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, 15. Finally, Naomi's best friend whispered the truth everyone already knew. He's not coming, honey. He's really not coming. Naomi had walked down that aisle in reverse, past 200 sympathetic faces, her white dress suddenly feeling like a costume for a role she'd never auditioned for again. She'd locked herself in the bridal suite and screamed into a pillow until her throat was raw. 3 years. 3 years of planning a future with a man who couldn't even send a text message to say he'd changed his mind. She found out later, through Instagram of all places, that Darius had rekindled things with his ex-girlfriend 2 weeks before the wedding. 2 weeks. And he'd said nothing. So Naomi did what any heartbroken woman with a culinary degree and nothing left to lose would do. She bought a one-way ticket to Seoul, South Korea, as far from Louisiana as she could get. Her parents thought she was crazy. Her friends thought she was running away. They were right. She was running. But sometimes running is the bravest thing you can do. Seoul was overwhelming from the moment she landed. The signs in Hangul that she couldn't read. The subway system that made New York look simple. The constant stares because she was black and stood out in every crowd. The cramped Gazawan she rented, a room barely 7 square meters with a bed, tiny desk, and mini fridge. Shared bathroom down the hall. It cost half her savings just to secure it for 3 months. But it was hers. And it was far from the church where she'd been humiliated. She found work at an upscale Western fusion restaurant in Gangnam, Seoul's wealthiest district. The pay wasn't great, but the tips from wealthy businessmen were. She also taught English 3 evenings a week to make ends meet. Every month, she sent money home to her mother who was dealing with medical bills from her diabetes. Life was hard, exhausting, and lonely, but it was better than the alternative. Better than seeing pity in everyone's eyes back home. Naomi made one real friend in Seoul. Yuna, a makeup artist who'd helped her on her first day when she'd gotten completely lost in Gangnam Station. Yuna spoke excellent English, loved American R&B music, and didn't treat Naomi like a curiosity. She taught Naomi survival Korean, took her to the best cheap restaurants, and warned her about which neighborhoods to avoid. Seoul can be hard for foreigners, Yuna had said. Especially black women. People will stare. Some will touch your hair without asking. Some will be racist without even knowing they're being racist. But there are good people too. You'll find your place. For 6 months, Naomi survived. She learned basic Korean phrases. She figured out the subway system. She discovered that convenience store triangle kimbap could be a satisfying dinner when money was tight. She learned to bow properly, use chopsticks without embarrassment, and navigate the complex honorific system even though she constantly messed it up. She also learned that heartbreak doesn't heal on a timeline. Some mornings she'd wake up and forget why she was in Seoul. Then she'd remember Darius, remember the wedding dress hanging unworn in her parents' closet, remember the cake that had been thrown away, and the pain would crash over her again. But she was building something. Slowly. She had notebook after notebook filled with recipes. Korean ingredients mixed with Louisiana soul food. Gochugaru in her grandmother's gumbo. Kimchi spiced collard greens. Doenjang in her dirty rice. She dreamed of opening a restaurant someday. Borrowed kiss, she'd call it. A fusion of 2 worlds she was learning to bridge. Then came that Friday night. The night everything changed. Naomi had just finished her shift at the restaurant. She'd changed out of her black uniform into jeans, a comfortable sweater, and sneakers. Her feet ached. Her back hurt. All she wanted was to go home, heat up some ramen, and watch a K-drama until she fell asleep. She was gathering her things from the staff locker when her manager, Mr. Park, rushed over looking flustered and apologetic. "Naomi SSI, I'm so sorry," he said in his accented English. "A late customer has specifically requested you. By name. He's very important. Can you please change back into uniform and serve just this one table?" Naomi's stomach dropped. Something about the way Mr. Park said, specifically requested, made her nervous. She peeked through the kitchen door to see who it was, and her blood turned to ice. Darius, her ex-fiancé, sitting at the best table in the restaurant, the one by the floor-to-ceiling windows with the view of Gangnam's glittering lights. And sitting across from him was a beautiful woman with perfect posture and an engagement ring that caught the light. His new fiancée. "No," Naomi whispered. "No, no, no. I can't. Please," Mr. Park said, and she could hear the desperation in his voice. "He asked for you specifically. He said he knows you. If I refuse a customer like this, my boss will be angry. I'm sorry, Naomi SSI. Please." Naomi felt tears burning behind her eyes. Darius knew she worked here. He'd looked her up somehow, found out where she was working, and came specifically to humiliate her, to show her his upgrade, to parade his new life in front of the woman he'd left at the altar. She had two choices: refuse and probably lose the job she desperately needed, or serve him and endure whatever cruelty he had planned. She chose survival. She changed back into her uniform with shaking hands, tied her apron, took 5 deep breaths. Then she walked out onto that floor with her head held as high as she could manage. Every step toward table 12 felt like walking to her own execution. "Naomi." Darius's voice was loud, performative, designed to draw attention. "Wow, I didn't expect to see you here. This is Tiffany, my fiancée. We're in Seoul for my promotion. VP of Asian Operations. Pretty impressive, right?" Tiffany smiled uncomfortably, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Darius continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "I heard you moved to Korea after, well, you know, the wedding thing. How are you doing? Still waitressing, I see. That's nice. Very honest work." Every word was a carefully aimed knife. Every smile was salt in a wound that hadn't fully healed. Naomi felt her hands trembling as she pulled out her notepad, trying to maintain professional composure. "What can I get you to drink?" she managed to ask, her voice barely steady. "Oh, we'll need a few minutes to look at the menu," Darius said, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. "But tell me, Naomi, are you happy here? In Korea? It must be so different from home. Do you ever regret running away?" The word running hit exactly as he intended. He was telling her that he saw her move to Seoul as cowardice, as escape, as failure. Tiffany touched his arm gently, a silent suggestion to perhaps be kinder, but Darius ignored her. Naomi felt something break inside her. Not her heart, that had already been shattered 6 months ago. Something else. Her dignity. Her carefully constructed armor. She needed to escape, needed to breathe, needed something. Anything to stop this moment from continuing. Her eyes scanned the restaurant desperately, looking for an exit, looking for salvation, looking for anything that could save her from this humiliation. That's when she saw him. Table 7, by the window on the opposite side of the restaurant. A man sitting alone, reading something on his phone. He was devastatingly handsome, dressed in what was clearly an expensive suit, Tom Ford maybe, perfectly tailored to his frame. His dark hair was styled immaculately. His posture spoke of confidence and power. Everything about him screamed wealth and importance. And he was completely unaware that he was about to become part of the most desperate gamble of Naomi's life. She didn't think. Thinking would have stopped her. She just acted, moving on pure instinct and desperation. She walked straight to table 7, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The man looked up as she approached, his dark eyes meeting hers with polite curiosity. He was even more handsome up close, with sharp features and an intensity in his gaze that should have intimidated her. But she was already beyond intimidation. She was in free fall. "I'm so sorry about this," Naomi whispered quickly in English, then louder, loud enough for Darius to hear across the restaurant. "Sorry I'm late, honey." And then she kissed him. She kissed this complete stranger full on the mouth, her hand touching his shoulder for balance. Her eyes squeezed shut because she couldn't bear to see his reaction. 3 seconds. That's all it lasted. 3 seconds that felt like an eternity and an instant all at once. When she pulled back, the entire restaurant seemed to have gone silent. The man, Min Suk, stared at her with wide eyes, clearly shocked. Around the restaurant, she noticed several men in dark suits had risen slightly from their seats, hands moving toward their jackets. Bodyguards. This man had bodyguards. What had she done? But then something unexpected happened. The shock in Min Suk's eyes transformed into something else. Amusement, curiosity, interest. A slow smile spread across his face, and instead of pushing her away or demanding to know what she was doing, he slid an arm around her waist, pulling her slightly closer. "It's okay," he said in perfect, unaccented English. "I just got here myself. Sit down." His voice was smooth, cultured, with an undertone of authority that made it clear he was used to being obeyed. Naomi glanced back at Darius, who looked absolutely stunned. His mouth was actually hanging open. Tiffany looked confused and uncomfortable. Mission accomplished. I have to work," Naomi stammered, suddenly very aware that she was pressed against a stranger's side, that his arm was still around her waist, that his expensive cologne was filling her senses. "I'm a waitress here. Not anymore tonight," Min Suk said calmly, and then he did something that made her knees weak. He gestured to one of the suited men, who immediately approached. "Tell the manager that she's with me now. She's done for the evening." The bodyguard nodded and walked toward Mr. Park, who took one look at Min Suk and went pale. Whoever this man was, Mr. Park clearly recognized him and was terrified of him. "Please sit," Min Suk said again, his tone gentle despite the command in his words. "We should talk. You've just made my evening infinitely more interesting, and I think we might be able to help each other." Naomi sat, more out of shock than agreement. Across the restaurant, she could see Darius trying to flag down another waiter, his expression furious. But the waiters were all suddenly very busy, and within 10 minutes, he and Tiffany left, Darius shooting dark looks at Naomi's table as they went. The moment they were gone, Naomi tried to pull away, tried to apologize, tried to explain. "I am so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. That was completely inappropriate and insane, and my ex-fiancé was here, and he left me at the altar, and he came here specifically to humiliate me, and I panicked, and you were sitting here, and I'm so sorry. I'll just go now." "Breathe," Min Suk said, and something about the calm authority in his voice made her obey. She took a shaky breath, then another. "That man, the one who left. He's your ex-fiancé? The one who left you at the altar?" She nodded miserably. "Then he's an idiot. And you're not going anywhere until we talk." "About what?" "About me assaulting you in the middle of a restaurant." Min Suk laughed, a genuine sound that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. "I've been through much worse than being kissed by a beautiful woman. Trust me. Now let me ask you something. How much do you know about me?" Naomi shook her head. "Nothing. I don't even know your name." This seemed to please him. "Good. Then this might actually work. My name is Kong Min Suk, and I have a proposition for you." For the next hour, Naomi sat at table 7 while Min Suk explained the most insane proposal she'd ever heard. He had a grandmother, he told her, who was traditional, powerful, and determined to see him married to a suitable Korean woman from an appropriate family. He'd been avoiding these marriage arrangements for years, but the pressure was intensifying. His grandmother was introducing him to a new candidate every month, women from allied families, women who wanted his money or his status or his connections. "I don't love any of them," he said simply, "and I'm tired of pretending I might. When you kissed me tonight, desperate and impulsive and completely unexpected, I saw an opportunity. What if we helped each other? What if we pretended to date? Just for 3 months. Long enough for my grandmother to see that I'm serious about someone, to back off with her marriage arrangements. In return, I'll pay off your student loans and give you enough money to start whatever life you want. Restaurant. Return to America. Your choice." Naomi stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "You want to pay me to be your fake girlfriend? That's insane. You don't even know me. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous." Min Suk's smile was knowing. "I'll have you thoroughly investigated by tomorrow morning. But my instincts about people are usually good. And right now, my instinct is that you're honest, desperate, and brave enough to kiss a stranger in a crowded restaurant. Those are qualities I can work with." He pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "Think about it. I'll have my lawyers draw up a proper contract. Everything will be professional, clear, safe. You have my word." Naomi looked at the business card, her fingers trembling as she picked it up. The card was simple, elegant, expensive paper with just a name and phone number. No company, no title, just Kang Min-suk in both English and Korean characters. Why me? She asked quietly. You could hire an actress, someone professional, someone who knows how to play this game. Min-suk considered her question carefully before answering. Because actresses play roles. You would be real. My grandmother can smell deception a mile away. She survived wars, poverty, building an empire from nothing. She doesn't miss anything. But you? You kissed me because you were desperate and hurt and needed to reclaim something. That authenticity, that raw emotion, that's something you can't fake. And honestly, he leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes holding hers. I'm tired of fake. I've been surrounded by it my entire life. That night, Naomi took the subway back to her tiny Gazawan, Min-suk's business card burning a hole in her pocket. His driver had offered to take her home, but she'd refused, needing the normalcy of the crowded train, the familiar stops, the walk through her neighborhood where ajumas sold vegetables from carts and old men played go on street corners. She needed to think, to process what had just happened. In her 7-square-meter room, she pulled out her laptop and Googled Kang Min-suk's soul. The results were frustratingly vague. A few society page mentions at charity galas. A brief article about a real estate development deal. Photos of him in expensive suits at various events. Always alone or with other serious-looking men in suits. Nothing concrete about what he actually did, but everything screamed power and wealth. She looked at her student loan balance on her phone. $80,000. A number that haunted her every month, growing with interest despite her payments. She called Yuna, who answered on the second ring. Yuni, you're not going to believe what just happened to me, Naomi said, and then spent 20 minutes explaining the entire insane evening. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Yuna, you still there? I'm here. I'm just trying to figure out if you've lost your mind, Yuna said finally. Naomi, you kissed a random stranger in a restaurant, and now he wants to pay you to be his fake girlfriend? This sounds like a K-drama plot. Actually, it sounds like several K-drama plots. Are you sure this isn't some kind of scam? I don't know what it is, Naomi admitted. But Yuna, he said he'd pay off my student loans. All of them. Do you know what that would mean? I could actually breathe. I could save money. I could actually work toward opening my restaurant instead of just dreaming about it. Or you could end up in pieces in the Han River, Yuna said darkly. Rich men in Seoul who have bodyguards and vague job descriptions are usually rich for questionable reasons. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll at least meet him in public if you decide to do this crazy thing. Naomi promised, but she'd already made her decision. The next morning, she texted the number on the business card with just one word. Okay. The response came within minutes. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., my office. Bring a lawyer if you want. She couldn't afford a lawyer, but she appreciated that he'd offered. Min-suk's office was in a gleaming building in Gangnam, all glass and steel and intimidation. The lobby alone was more luxurious than anywhere Naomi had ever been. The security guard checked her ID, made a phone call, and then directed her to a private elevator that required a key card. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul. Min-suk was standing by the windows when she entered, still in an expensive suit, this one charcoal gray. You came, he said, turning to face her. I wasn't entirely sure you would. I'm here, Naomi said, trying to keep her voice steady. But I want to understand exactly what I'm agreeing to before I sign anything. Smart. He gestured to a conference table where 3 men in suits were already seated. Lawyers, clearly. I had them prepare a contract. It's fair, I promise. But you should read every word. For the next hour, Naomi read through the most surreal legal document of her life. The contract specified everything. They would go on public dates twice per week. She would attend 1 family gathering per month. The arrangement would last exactly 3 months. In return, her student loans would be paid immediately, half up front. The other half would be paid at the completion of the 3 months. But there were other clauses too. Clauses protecting her. Either party could terminate the contract immediately if they felt unsafe. No physical intimacy was required beyond hand-holding and brief kisses necessary for public appearances. She would receive a monthly allowance for appropriate clothing and expenses. If the contract was terminated early for any reason other than her breach of terms, she would still receive the full payment. And there was a non-disclosure agreement, of course, preventing either of them from discussing the arrangement publicly. Why all these protections for me? Naomi asked, looking up from the contract. These clauses are all in my favor. Because you're taking a risk trusting me, Min-suk said simply. And because I want you to feel safe. This only works if you're comfortable. If you're constantly afraid or second-guessing, my grandmother will see through it immediately. So yes, the contract protects you. That's intentional. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Mr. Kong is also taking considerable risk. If Ms. Brooks were to breach confidentiality or attempt to extort him, the penalties would be severe. I'm not going to extort anyone, Naomi said firmly. I just want to pay off my debt and build a life. That's all. Then we have an understanding, Min-suk said, offering her a pen. Naomi signed, her hand only shaking slightly. When it was done, Min-suk dismissed the lawyers and pulled out another document. This is the wire transfer confirmation. Your student loans will be paid by end of business today. Half of them as agreed. Naomi stared at the numbers on the page, tears suddenly blurring her vision. $40,000. Just like that. Why are you crying? Min-suk asked, sounding genuinely confused. Because I've been drowning in that debt for 5 years, Naomi said, wiping her eyes. Every month, watching the interest grow faster than I could pay it down. And you just made half of it disappear with a signature. Do you have any idea what that means to me? Something shifted in Min-suk's expression, a softness she hadn't seen before. I think I'm beginning to understand. Come on, there's one more thing we need to do before our first official date. He led her to another part of the office, where a woman was waiting with racks of clothes. This is Jiyoon. She's a personal stylist. You'll need appropriate clothing for where we'll be going. Consider this part of the arrangement. I can dress myself, Naomi protested, but June was already circling her, assessing her with a professional eye. Of course you can, Min-suk said. But we'll be attending events where appearances matter. Not because I care what you wear, but because it will be easier for you if you blend in. Trust me on this. For the next 2 hours, Naomi was measured, dressed, and assessed. Jiyoon pulled dresses and suits and shoes and accessories, creating what she called a capsule wardrobe suitable for various social situations. Every piece was more expensive than anything Naomi had ever owned. She felt like Cinderella, except her prince was a stranger she was contractually obligated to pretend to love. Our first date is Friday night, Min-suk told her as she was leaving, carrying bags of clothes she still couldn't quite believe were hers. Latte World Tower. Seoul Sky. There's a charity event. Very public, very visible. My grandmother will definitely hear about it. Friday came too quickly. Naomi spent the entire day anxious, trying on and discarding 5 different dresses before settling on a navy blue cocktail dress that Jiyoon had insisted was perfect for her skin tone. She'd never felt more out of place than when Min-suk's driver picked her up in a black Genesis sedan that probably cost more than she'd earned in 2 years. The driver, a quiet man who introduced himself as Mr. Kim, treated her with polite respect that felt surreal. Seoul Sky, the observation deck at Latte World Tower, was breathtaking. The entire city spread out below them, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. But Naomi barely noticed the view. She was too aware of the people around them, Seoul's elite in their designer clothes and expensive jewelry. She was the only black person in the room, and she felt every eye on them as Min-suk guided her through the crowd with a hand on the small of her back. Breathe, he murmured in her ear. You look beautiful. Stop worrying. But she couldn't stop worrying. A woman in a stunning hanbok, modern and elegant, approached them speaking rapid Korean. Min-suk responded smoothly, and while Naomi couldn't catch everything, she heard her name and saw the woman's eyes widen with undisguised curiosity. When the woman left, Naomi leaned close to Min-suk. What did she ask you? She asked if you were my girlfriend, he said casually. I said yes. She'll tell everyone she knows by tomorrow morning. Mission accomplished. They made their way through the event, Min-suk introducing her to various people, most of whom looked at her with barely concealed shock. She understood enough Korean to catch the whispered comments. American. So tall. Her skin. Some comments were curious, others felt like barely disguised judgment. She was holding her champagne glass so tightly she thought it might shatter when she heard something that made her freeze. A man, older, wealthy-looking, said something in Korean that she understood perfectly. The words were crude, making assumptions about her and Min-suk's relationship that made her feel dirty. She felt Min-suk go rigid beside her. When he turned to face the man, his expression was ice-cold, his voice cutting. Naomi didn't understand all his words, but she understood the tone. Dangerous. Absolute. The man went pale, stammered an apology, and retreated quickly. Several other people who'd been watching suddenly found other places to be. What did you say to him? Naomi asked quietly. Min-suk's jaw was still clenched. I told him if I ever heard him speak about you or any woman that way again, he would regret it. I told him to leave. Now, he turned to her, his expression softening. Are you okay? Do you want to leave? Naomi realized she was shaking, not from fear, but from anger and humiliation and gratitude all mixed together. Yes, please. I can't breathe in here. They left the glittering event and Min-suk directed his driver to take them somewhere else. 20 minutes later, they were in Yuljiro, sitting on plastic stools at a pojangmaka, a street food tent where elderly Korean men drank soju and ate spicy tteokbokki. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Here, no one cared who they were. The ajumma running the tent just wanted to know what they were ordering. This is more my speed, Naomi admitted, finally relaxing as she wrapped her hands around a paper cup of hot soup. Min-suk had removed his tie and jacket, looking more human and less like an intimidating billionaire. Mine too, honestly, he said, pouring soju into small glasses. The fancy stuff is just performance. This is real. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing more naturally than Naomi expected. She told him about New Orleans, about second lines in Mardi Gras, about her grandmother's kitchen where she'd learned to cook, about how food was love in her family, how every meal was a celebration or a comfort or a bridge between generations. He listened intently, asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested. He told her about growing up in Seoul, caught between his traditional grandmother's expectations and his father's ambitions. I wanted to be an architect, he admitted, and she could hear real longing in his voice. I wanted to design buildings, create beautiful spaces. I studied architecture for 2 years in university before my father made it clear that wasn't an option. I had responsibilities, family obligations. What changed? Naomi asked. Min-suk was quiet for a long moment, staring into his soju. My father died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. And I inherited everything. The business, the obligations, the expectations, and the weight of knowing that everything my family built, for better or worse, now rests on my shoulders. For better or worse? Naomi caught the implication. What does your family do exactly? I Googled you, but everything was vague. Import-export. Real estate. Nothing concrete. It's complicated, Min-suk said, and she saw him close off slightly. Some of it is legitimate business. Some of it is legacy from a different time, when Korea was different, when my grandfather and father did what they had to do to survive. I've been working to change that, to make everything legitimate. But it takes time. It wasn't a full answer, but it was more honest than she'd expected. And Naomi decided not to push. Not yet. They had 3 months. She'd learn the truth eventually. When she shivered in the cool night air, Min-suk draped his expensive suit jacket over her shoulders without a word. It smelled like his cologne, something expensive and understated. Thank you, she said quietly, for defending me back there, for leaving when I needed to leave, for this. She gestured at the pojangmaka, the street, the normalcy. You don't need to thank me for basic decency, Min-suk said. No one should speak about you that way. And honestly, I was looking for an excuse to leave that event anyway. I'd rather be here, eating tteokbokki with you, than drinking champagne with people I don't like. When he smiled, really smiled, his entire face transformed. He looked younger, less burdened. Naomi felt something shift in her chest, something dangerous. This was supposed to be fake. She needed to remember that. Their second date was different. Min-suk invited her to his penthouse in Hanamdong, and Naomi's jaw dropped when she walked in. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars. Art on the walls that looked original and priceless. And a kitchen, massive and gleaming, that looked completely unused. You have this kitchen and you've never used it? Naomi couldn't keep the horror out of her voice. That's criminal. Actually criminal. Min-suk laughed. I told you I don't cook. I usually eat out or my housekeeper makes simple things. Naomi rolled up her sleeves. Not tonight. Tonight, I'm making you my grandmother's jambalaya, Korean style. She raided his pristine pantry and refrigerator, finding ingredients and making do with what was missing. She sent him to the convenience store for gochugaru and decent rice, laughing at his confusion about which brand to buy. When he returned, she put him to work. Here, cut these vegetables. She handed him a knife and an onion. Min-suk stared at the onion like it was a bomb. How exactly do I? Naomi couldn't help but laugh. You run an entire business empire, but you can't dice an onion? Different skill sets, he said dryly, but he tried. He was terrible at it. The pieces were uneven, some huge chunks, some tiny bits. Naomi gently corrected his grip, guided his hands, showed him the rocking motion of the knife. He was a terrible student, getting frustrated easily, but he kept trying. And watching this powerful, intimidating man struggle with something as simple as cooking made him human, made him real. As they cooked together, the conversation deepened. He told her about his father, about the complicated relationship they'd had, about feeling like he'd never been enough. He wanted me hard, ruthless, a proper heir. But I kept wanting to draw buildings and read poetry. He thought I was weak. You're not weak, Naomi said firmly. You defended me at that event. You're honest about your limitations. You're trying to change your family's legacy. That takes strength. He looked at her with something in his eyes that made her heart race. Thank you for saying that. She told him about Darius, about standing in that wedding dress alone, about the specific kind of humiliation that comes from public heartbreak. Everyone was watching. Everyone pitied me. I could feel it in every look, every touch on my arm, every "are you okay?" That really meant, wow, this is so embarrassing for you. I just wanted to disappear. So I did. I came here. He was a fool, Min-suk said quietly, stirring the rice she'd instructed him to watch. Anyone who could walk away from you is a fool. The words were simple, but the way he said them, with such certainty, made Naomi's breath catch. She busied herself with the jambalaya, adding gochujang to the traditional spices, watching the red pepper flakes bloom in the oil. They ate on his couch, sitting close, the lights of Seoul twinkling below them. The jambalaya was perfect, spicy, and complex, the Korean pepper adding a different kind of heat than cayenne would have. Min-suk took his first bite and closed his eyes. This is incredible. How did you learn to cook like this? My grandmother, Naomi said, smiling at the memory. She taught me that food is love. Every meal is a story. Every ingredient has meaning. She could take nothing and make it sing. When she died 2 years ago, I felt like I lost my connection to home. Cooking her recipes, adding my own touches, it helps me feel close to her again. They shared makgeolli, Korean rice wine, and talked until 3 in the morning. About dreams and disappointments. About family and obligation. About the weight of expectations and the courage it takes to choose your own path. When Min-suk's driver took her home, Naomi realized something terrifying. She liked him. Really liked him. This wasn't supposed to happen. The next dates blurred together, each one pulling them closer. Noribang with his friends, where she discovered he could sing emotional ballads that made her see depths in him she hadn't expected. Itaewon's International District, where he helped her serve soul food at a pop-up event, getting his expensive clothes dirty and not caring. She watched him talk to Ethiopian restaurant owners, Filipino workers, Nigerian students, treating everyone with the same respect. She saw kindness in him that contradicted everything about his cold, powerful exterior. Then came the family dinner. Naomi had been dreading it for weeks. Min-suk's grandmother, Kang Myung-hee, lived in a traditional hanok in Bukshin, a house that had been in the family for generations. The night before, Min-suk had coached Naomi for hours. Proper bowing angles, how to use honorifics, table manners, how to sit, how to speak, how to show respect. Just be yourself, he'd finally said. But respectful yourself. Naomi wore the hanbok he'd had made for her, navy blue with silver embroidery. It was beautiful and modest, and made her feel like she was wearing a costume. Her hands shook as they approached the house. What if she hates me? She whispered. Min-suk squeezed her hand. Then she hates you. But I think you're going to surprise her. You surprise everyone. The grandmother was exactly as intimidating as Naomi had feared. 82 years old, barely 5 feet tall, but with eyes that missed nothing and a presence that filled the room. She spoke only formal Korean, clearly testing Naomi's language skills. Naomi struggled through her prepared greetings, bowing deeply, using every honorific she'd learned. She saw the grandmother's eyes narrow, assessing, judging. The dinner was an ordeal. Naomi sat on the floor in traditional style, her legs cramping after 10 minutes. She tried to follow every rule Min-suk had taught her, but she fumbled with chopsticks, used the wrong honorific twice, forgot to wait for the grandmother to begin eating first. She could feel failure pressing down on her. And then there was Ji-won, Min-suk's cousin, beautiful and perfect, and everything Naomi wasn't. She asked pointed questions in Korean that Naomi barely understood. Where was Naomi's family from? What were her intentions? Could she have Korean children? That last question made Naomi freeze, not sure how to respond. Min-suk's voice cut through the tension, sharp and firm. He spoke in Korean, but Naomi caught the important words. Precious person. Respect. His defense of her was absolute, brooking no argument. The room went silent. Even the grandmother looked surprised. He'd never defended anyone like this before, Naomi realized. Never drawn such a clear line. After dinner, the grandmother pulled Naomi aside, speaking slowly in English. You are not what I expected. My grandson looks at you like his grandfather looked at me. This worries me. It worries me too, Naomi admitted honestly, because what else could she say? The grandmother's lips twitched, almost a smile. At least you are honest. Come again. We will teach you proper Korean. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. As they left, Min-suk took her hand. You were perfect. Naomi laughed shakily. I was a disaster. I used the wrong word for rice. I nearly knocked over the tea, and I'm pretty sure I insulted your aunt by accident. You were yourself, Min-suk said. Trying hard, respectful, honest. That's what mattered. And you made my grandmother almost smile. That's practically a miracle. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about how Min-suk had defended her, about the look in his eyes, about how this fake relationship was feeling less fake every day. It scared her. She'd promised herself she wouldn't fall for him. But her heart, as hearts often do, wasn't listening to promises. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late on a Tuesday, past midnight, when someone knocked on Naomi's door. She opened it to find Min-suk, disheveled and shaken, still in his suit, but with his tie loose and hair messy. She noticed blood on his shirt cuff. Not much, but enough. Can I come in? He asked, and his voice was different. Vulnerable. Lost. She let him in without question. Her gazawan was tiny, barely enough room for her bed and desk. He looked around at her modest space, really seeing how she lived for the first time. The mini fridge. The shared bathroom down the hall. The clothes hanging on a rack because there was no closet. He sat on her floor, back against the wall, and said nothing. Naomi didn't push. Didn't ask about the blood or why he was here or what had happened. She just made 2 bowls of instant ramen at her desk's hot plate, put on a K-drama with the volume low, and sat next to him. They ate in silence. Around 2 in the morning, he fell asleep there on her floor, exhausted and troubled. She covered him with her only blanket and went back to her sketches at her desk. She was working on menu designs for the restaurant she still dreamed of opening. Soul of Soul, she'd written at the top. Jambalaya with gochugaru. Fried chicken with doenjang glaze. Collard greens with kimchi. Food that bridged her 2 worlds. When Min-suk woke at 4 in the morning, disoriented, he found her asleep at her desk, pencil still in her hand. He looked at her drawings for a long time. Then he carefully picked her up, surprisingly strong, and laid her on her bed. He stood there watching her sleep. This woman who'd crashed into his life with a desperate kiss and had somehow become the most real thing in his carefully controlled world. He whispered in Korean, so quietly she couldn't hear, "What are you doing to me?" Then he left, but not before leaving a coffee from her favorite convenience store on her desk. When Naomi woke, she found the coffee and her blanket smelling like his cologne, and she knew she was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that contracts couldn't protect against. Their next dates felt different. More charged. More dangerous. He took her to Bukshin Hanak village, showing her traditional Seoul, explaining his family's history. How his grandfather had built their empire during the desperate post-war years. How each generation had carried both pride and shame. She shared her own history, her family's legacy of slavery and survival, of music and food and resilience. They found unexpected parallels in their stories. Both families built something from nothing. Both carried the weight of history. Both understood obligation and sacrifice. At a traditional tea house, Min-suk gently corrected her chopstick grip, his hands warm over hers. He taught her Korean phrases beyond the basics she knew. "Dangjeonijeo," he said softly. "It means I like you." She repeated it, mangling the pronunciation, and he smiled. "Dangshindu tipperlo. You're special too." The way he looked at her when he said it made her heart race. This was supposed to be fake. But nothing about the way he touched her face, the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, felt remotely fake anymore. Then came the night in Hongdae, Seoul's artistic district. They were watching street performances, blending into the young crowd. when a journalist recognized Min-suk. Cameras appeared from nowhere, questions shouted in Korean. Min-suk's security materialized instantly, creating a barrier, but not before several photos were taken. Min-suk gripped her hand tightly and moved them away quickly, his expression dark. Later, in a quiet cafe, Naomi finally asked the question she'd been avoiding. Who are you really? Not the business cards or the vague descriptions. Who are you? Min-suk was quiet for a long time. If I tell you the whole truth, you might leave. She reached across the table, took his hand. If you don't tell me, I definitely will. He started to answer, but his phone rang. Urgent business, he said. He had to go. Tomorrow, he promised. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. But before tomorrow came, Yuna showed up at Naomi's door with a tablet and a worried expression. You need to see this, Yuna said, pulling up a Korean documentary with English subtitles. It was about organized crime in Seoul, about families that had built empires from post-war chaos. And there, mentioned multiple times, was the Kong family. Connections to illegal gambling, protection rackets, violent enforcement. Min-suk's father, his grandfather, and Min-suk himself, described as the current head, trying to legitimize operations but still maintaining the power structure. Naomi felt sick as the pieces clicked into place. The bodyguards, the fear in people's eyes, the blood on his cuff, the vague business descriptions. He wasn't just wealthy. He was dangerous. His family was organized crime. I tried to warn you, Yuna said gently. Rich and dangerous. Naomi, you need to be careful. But Naomi was already out the door, heading to Min-suk's office. She walked past his secretary, past security who recognized her and didn't stop her, and burst into a meeting room where Min-suk sat with several serious men. We need to talk. Now. He dismissed everyone without hesitation. When they were alone, Naomi didn't hold back her anger and fear. You're a criminal. Your family is organized crime. And you lied to me about it. Min-suk's face was carefully blank. It's more complicated than a documentary can explain. Naomi laughed bitterly. Is it? Because it seems pretty simple to me. Your family hurts people, takes money from people, threatens people, and you're in charge of it all now. Yes, he said quietly, and the simple admission knocked the wind from her anger. Yes, my family has done terrible things. My grandfather, my father, they built this organization during desperate times. Some of what they did was protecting Korean businesses from foreign gangs. Some of it was survival, and some of it was wrong. Just wrong. I've spent 3 years trying to make it right, trying to transition everything legitimate. Real estate, entertainment, shipping, all legal now. But I can't erase the past. I can't walk away from the people who depend on me. And I can't pretend the reputation doesn't follow me. Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? Naomi's voice cracked. Would you have agreed to this if you knew? He countered. She was silent because they both knew the answer. That's why, he said. Because I'm selfish. Because I saw you and I wanted you in my life. Even if it was fake. Even if it was temporary. I wanted to know what it felt like to be with someone who saw me. Not the family name or the reputation or the money. Just me. I don't know if I can believe you, Naomi whispered. I don't know if any of this was real. Something broke in his carefully controlled expression. It was real. All of it. Every moment from that second night. The contract was just an excuse to be near you. Before she could respond, his phone rang again. He answered, spoke tersely in Korean, then looked at her with fear she'd never seen in him before. You need to leave Seoul. Tonight. What? What? He showed her photos on his phone. Pictures of her. At work. Teaching English. Walking to the subway. Taken by someone following her. A rival family. They know about you now. They'll use you to get to me. I've already arranged protection, but Naomi, these people are dangerous. They won't just threaten you. He couldn't finish the sentence. She saw real terror in his eyes, and it made her own fears spike. Within hours, she was moved to a safe apartment, bodyguards stationed outside. She couldn't go to work, couldn't teach, couldn't live her life. And then a note was slipped under her door despite all the security. Simple words in English. Leave him or suffer consequences. When Min-suk arrived and saw the note, his fury was terrifying. But underneath it, she saw guilt. This is my fault. I brought you into this world, and now you're in danger because of me. Then end it, Naomi said, surprising herself with the words. Tell them it was fake. That I mean nothing to you. Make it stop. He looked at her like she'd stabbed him. I can't do that. His voice was rough. Why not? She demanded. Why can't you just lie and make this stop? He crossed the room, cupped her face in his hands. Because it would be a lie. Because they'd know it. Because I love you, Naomi. I love you so much it terrifies me. And I will burn everything I've built to keep you safe, if I have to. The words hung between them, raw and honest and devastating. You love me, she whispered. Since that night you made jambalaya in my kitchen, he said. Maybe even before. You crashed into my carefully controlled life and made me want things I'd convinced myself I didn't need. Love. Partnership. A future that wasn't just obligation and duty. You made me want to be better. To do better. Before she could respond, he stepped back, composing himself. But love isn't enough if you're not safe. I'm ending the contract early. You'll get the full payment. I'll help you stay in Korea safely or return to America, whatever you want. I'll handle the rival family. Make it clear you mean nothing to me, and they'll leave you alone. He was protecting her the only way he knew how. By letting her go. By pushing her away. By lying about what she meant to him. Naomi spent the next 2 days in that safe apartment, thinking. Yuna visited, asking the question that mattered. Do you love him? Naomi closed her eyes. Yes. God help me, yes. Yuna took her hand. Then you have to decide if he's worth the risk. If this life is worth it. Naomi thought about Darius, who'd promised her forever and couldn't even manage one day. She thought about Min Suk, who'd never promised her anything beyond 3 months, but had given her honesty, protection, and a love she could feel in every action. She thought about the restaurant space she dreamed of, about bridging cultures through food, about building something real. I survived being left at the altar in front of 200 people, Naomi said slowly. I moved to a foreign country alone. I learned a new language. I built a life from nothing. I've navigated systems my whole life that weren't designed for me. I know about danger, Yuna. I know about risk. And I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. She texted Minsuk to meet her at Han River. When he arrived, she could see the resignation in his eyes. He thought she was going to say goodbye. I've made my decision, Naomi said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You don't get to decide what's best for me. I've spent my whole life with people making decisions for me. My parents choosing my major. Darius planning our wedding without asking what I wanted. Even you, with your contract and your protection and your lies, you decided what I should know and when. I'm done with that. Naomi, please understand. She held up her hand, stopping him. I'm not done. If we're going to do this, really do this, I need the truth. All of it. Always. No more protecting me from information. No more deciding what I can handle. I need to make my own choices, even if they're dangerous ones. Even if it means staying with me? In this world. His voice was barely a whisper. She stepped closer, took his hand. Especially if it means that. Because here's what I've learned, Minsuk. Love isn't about safety. It's about choice. I choose you. I choose us. I choose to take this risk because you're worth it. We're worth it. She saw tears in his eyes, something she'd never expected to see. Are you sure? He asked. Because once you're really in, once they know you matter to me, there's no going back to your old life. I don't want my old life, she said firmly. I want this one. The complicated, dangerous, beautiful one. With you. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, he said against her hair. I love you so much. They stood there by the Han River as the sun set over Seoul, two people from completely different worlds choosing each other despite every logical reason not to. A week later, Minsuk took her to see something. A restaurant space in Itaewon, corner location, big windows perfect for an open kitchen. She walked through the empty space, seeing the potential immediately. What is this? She asked, though her heart already knew. Yours, he said simply. I've been working on this for 2 months. Lease secured, permits obtained, contractors hired. Everything is ready for your vision. She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. Why? He came to her, wiped her tears gently. Because watching you sketch restaurant designs at 3 in the morning, seeing your face light up when you talk about food, listening to your dreams, that's when I knew. You need this. Not because of me, not because of our arrangement. You need this because it's who you are. So whether you stay with me or not, whether this works out or not, this is yours. Your dream. Borrowed kiss. She looked at the sign he'd had made, glowing softly even in daylight. Villing Kissu borrowed kiss. Named after the desperate moment that had brought them together. She kissed him then, properly, deeply, a kiss that wasn't borrowed or fake or for show. A kiss that was entirely, completely real. No more contracts, she said. No more timelines. Just us. Figuring it out together. Together, he agreed. and it was a promise they both intended to keep. 6 months later, Borrowed Kiss restaurant opened to a packed house. The menu was everything Naomi had dreamed of: Korean spiced fried chicken, kimchi jambalaya, gochujang étouffee, collard green mandu. Food that told her story, that bridged her Louisiana roots with her Korean present. Min Suk was in the kitchen with her, still terrible at cooking but trying anyway, making her laugh as he nearly burned the rice again. His grandmother attended, tasting every dish with a critical eye before pronouncing it interesting, in a good way. She pulled Naomi aside and handed her a worn recipe card. My mother's kimchi recipe. You may adapt it for your menu. Carefully. It was acceptance, finally. Full and complete. Naomi's parents flew in from Louisiana. Her father, initially terrified his daughter was dating a gangster, saw how Min Suk looked at her, how he'd learned to cook her grandmother's recipes, how he treated her with such reverence and love. When Min Suk asked for permission to propose, using careful, respectful English, her father studied him for a long moment before saying, "You take care of my daughter." Min Suk met his eyes steadily. "With my life, sir." The proposal came later, in their restaurant kitchen after closing. Naomi was covered in flour, laughing at something a staff member had said. Min Suk watched her from across the kitchen, this woman who'd changed everything, and couldn't wait another moment. "Marry me," he said in English, then repeated in Korean. "Narang gurunhejule." She froze, flour-covered hands suspended in midair. "We haven't even been together a year." "I know. Too fast. Forget I said anything." She walked to him, cupped his face with her floury hands, leaving white marks on his cheeks. "I didn't say no. Ask me properly. In both languages. With a ring." He laughed, pulled a small box from his pocket. "I've been carrying this for 2 months, waiting for the right moment." The ring was perfect, a black pearl, rare and unique, set in simple platinum. He got on one knee right there in their kitchen. "Naomi Brooks, you changed my entire life. You made me want to be better. You brought color and joy into a world that was just duty and obligation. Will you marry me?" Naranguranejole. "Yes," she said, crying and laughing simultaneously. "Nay, yes. Always yes." When he slid the ring on her finger, their staff, who'd been secretly watching, erupted in applause. Even the bodyguards stationed outside came in clapping. "Even our private moments aren't private," Naomi laughed through her tears. "Never are in this life," Min Suk admitted. "Is that okay?" She kissed him. "As long as I have you, everything is okay." That night, someone walked past Borrowed Kiss restaurant. Darius, in Seoul again for business. He looked through the window and saw them together, Naomi and Min Suk in the open kitchen, wearing matching aprons, working side by side. They were laughing about something, completely comfortable with each other. Min Suk said something that made Naomi swat him with a towel. He caught her hand, pulled her close, kissed her flour-covered nose. The love between them was obvious, radiant, real. Darius watched for a moment, finally understanding what he'd lost. Not just Naomi, but the possibility of this kind of love. He walked away, and Naomi, glancing up, saw him go. Min Suk noticed. "Your ex?" She nodded, then turned back to their work, to their restaurant, to their life. "That's the past. You're my present. This is my present." She kissed him quickly. "Now finish that sauce before it burns." The camera pulls back from the restaurant, the sign glowing warm in the Seoul night. Inside, people of every nationality sit together, sharing food that bridges cultures. Korean businessmen trying jambalaya for the first time. American tourists delighting in kimchi-spiced fried chicken. Nigerian students and Filipino workers and Japanese tourists all connected through food that tells a story of two worlds meeting. And in the kitchen, Naomi and Min Suk work side by side, building something beautiful from a kiss that started as desperation but became destiny. This story teaches us that sometimes our most desperate moments lead to our greatest blessings. Naomi's impulsive kiss, born from humiliation and heartbreak, opened a door to a love she never imagined possible. It reminds us that healing doesn't follow a timeline, and that building a life after devastation takes courage. The story shows us that love isn't about safety or logic, it's about choice. Choosing to be vulnerable again after betrayal. Choosing to see beyond surface differences. Choosing to build bridges between cultures, backgrounds, and worlds that seem impossibly far apart. We learn that people are more than their worst moments or their family legacies. Min Suk carried the weight of his family's dark history, but he chose to be different, to build something better. Naomi carried the shame of public rejection, but she chose to start over, to dream again, to risk her heart one more time. Their love story reminds us that the most meaningful connections often come from unexpected places, that sometimes a stranger's kindness matters more than a familiar person's cruelty, and that food, like love, has the power to bridge any divide. Most importantly, this story teaches us that we are the authors of our own lives. Not our exes who left us, not our families who expect certain paths, not our circumstances that try to limit us. We choose. And sometimes, choosing love, choosing risk, choosing to build something beautiful despite the danger. That's the bravest thing we can do. Thank you so much for staying with Naomi and Minsuk's journey. If their story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate love across cultures and borders, and share this with someone who needs to remember that heartbreak isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something extraordinary. Remember, some kisses change everything. And sometimes, the most desperate moments lead to the most beautiful futures. Until next time, keep believing in second chances, in unlikely love stories, and in the magic that happens when two worlds collide.